Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Action 22. I'm Sarah Blackhurst, and this is Brian D. McCain, and the D stands for?
Don't you want to know?
So today we've got Dave Young, who is our treasurer for Colorado. He is running for office, for reelection for that seat. But he's been such a wonderful Action 22 member, and he's got all this really great information for us. He always attends our meetings, and there's some really cool things we're going to talk about that could actually get money back in your pocket. So you're going to want to listen all the way through because we're saving that part for the end. But Dave is I always say he's the nicest man in politics. I stand by that. But he's also a teacher. He's a professor. He's an instructor. And so he's always so beneficial for us to learn everything we can about things we don't normally think about with regard to the Treasury and money and how things are done.
And it's something that not many people, not the average voter, they don't think about this position at all. And it's good. And Dave has always come to our events, and we always say, hey, can you speak? And you always say yes. And we learn something new every time, and so do our members. So thank you.
Good.
Yep, we're always excited to have you. So, Dave, let's start with, there's 4 things we wanted to talk about today, but let's start with just a quick update on Climber. And if you've been around Action 22 for the last 2 years, this is a project that you've been working on, and our Action 22 members have gotten briefed quite a bit. So just give us an update on where that's at.
Great. Well, thanks. And Sarah and Brian, thanks so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure. And I really appreciate the fact that you want to get the word out about these programs. So Climber, I was down here, 2 years ago, October. And that was, I think, the first presentation I did on that. We were still trying to put the nuts and bolts together. The good news is that we've actually put all the nuts and bolts together on Climber. It's a $250 million small business loan program for businesses with less than 100 employees. We launched this thing, and then that was kind of the middle of all of the economic chaos that was going on. Turned out, and I should say, these are below market rate interest rate loans to businesses for working capital, $500,000 down to now $10,000. At the time, it was down to $30,000, but what happened was that we had the PPP program coming at the federal level, and several tranches of that, which, as you'll recall, were actually forgivable loans. So a lot of the attention of businesses as well as lenders turned over to PPP. And so, we took kind of not a pause, but we knew that businesses were going to be looking elsewhere. But we're beginning to see now businesses, as that PPP money has kind of run its course, businesses are starting to max out their credit cards. Businesses are starting to go after a line of credit. And, sometimes those interest rates are high. And we, again, are offering below market rate interest rates. So we went back to the legislature. We actually changed some of the terms. We had a 5-year term, and that's really not industry standard in lending. It typically is more than that, up to 10 years. And so we changed that because even though if you have below market rate interest rates, if your term is short, the monthly payments are too high. So we realized that. We made some other changes to include businesses below 5 employees, even down to single or sole proprietors. And we have lowered the amount that someone can borrow, their business can borrow. So we think we've expanded the funnel. And I always say I want people to go to climber-colorado.com and check it out. It may not be the right lending program for a business, but we want every business in the state of Colorado to take a good hard look at it and decide if it's the right one.
Well, and even if you don't think that you would qualify or anything like that, it's really important to it's worth checking out. You're going to be amazed at some of the things that they're able to do with this just to help get everybody back on. And that was a really big deal for you.
Right.
Okay.
And I do want to say, if you go to a lender right now, they may not offer it, but we're in the process of upgrading all of the work we do with lenders with these new terms that came out of the legislature. So, be patient, but we're working it. But in the meantime, go check climber-colorado.com just to see what it's all about.
So the number 2 thing that you want to announce and tell everybody about is a new retirement savings for anybody, right?
Well, we have Colorado PARA. That's the
Right.
Public Employees Retirement Association. I'm a member of that board of trustees. This is for public employees, teachers, and others. Some counties are involved as well. And so we have state employees involved with that. So I'm not talking about PARA. I'm talking about the private sector. And we did a study back in 2019 when I first got into office, and we discovered there are 1 million people in the private sector. That's 40% of the private sector workforce that don't have access to a retirement savings program at work. And guess what's happening? They're not saving for retirement because there's no easy button that allows them to be able to do this. And so we looked around and we discovered that other states were doing something called an auto IRA opt-out program, and I'll pick that apart a little bit, and we're being very successful with it. So instead of just kind of saying, please go find a plan and start saving, which we discovered doesn't work because people are overwhelmed by the terminology. They don't know what plan is right for them. What we have is an auto-enroll situation. So we're going to use the payroll deduction of businesses that don't have a plan. We're not going to make the business a fiduciary. We're not going to load them up with a bunch of legal and financial work to do. We are simply going to use payroll deduction, and employees in those businesses are automatically enrolled in the program. So they begin to save right away.
So do they have a choice or not?
They do ultimately have a choice because I said auto IRA opt out.
Oh, okay.
So if they really don't want to do it, they can opt out. So it's still voluntary. But what we've discovered in the other states that do this is about 70% of the savers stay in and continue to save. And this is what we want. Now, I've had people say, well, does it have to be Colorado Secure Savings Program? If my small business want to start up a retirement savings program on our own, can we do that? Certainly. My goal is savers. And the reason I want to emphasize that is because we did a study of the cost of doing nothing. If we don't do something, these folks are going to end up productive people in our state that work an entire career and get to retirement, and they're in poverty. Mm-hmm. If you're in poverty in retirement, all of a sudden now you're having to lean on safety net services like being on Medicaid as well as Medicare, being on housing supports, being on the SNAP program, maybe food security. They're all taxpayer-funded services. And we actually calculated the cost of doing nothing. It's $18 billion over the next 15 years. And after being on Joint Budget Committee, I know we don't have that money in our budget at all. We're strapped in every part of our budget, so there's no way we can do that. So we've got to get people on a different financial track, and this does that. So, if they save another way, I'm fine with that, but we have to create savers so that people can be sustainable. And my byline that I use all the way along is everybody deserves a sustainable and dignified retirement. So that's our public employees, that's our private sector employees as well. Everybody in the state, I want to lift up and make sure people are sustainable. And this is, I think, a way that we're going to be able to do this. We're going to pilot this with a select number of businesses in October, and we're going to fully launch in the new year the Colorado Secure Savings Program. So you're going to begin to hear a lot about this. And again, this is a big deal because it's covering such a huge number of people. But guess what? We left in the legislature when we passed this legislation in 2020. We included the prospect for multi-state partnerships. And turns out that, and again, I should emphasize the fees that the savers pay fund this. This is budget neutral for the state. The fees are there, and we're keeping them to 1% or less. But New Mexico would love to have a program like this, but they don't have enough savers. The fees would be too high. But if they partner with us, their fees come way down, and so do ours. And so we've already formed a memo of cooperation with them. They're going to try to run a bill in the next legislative session, and we're going to welcome them in if they're able to do that. And we have some other states that are interested as well.
What other states are already doing this?
So Oregon, Illinois, and California currently have an auto IRA opt-out program. You have some other states that are exploring that option, as well as we have multi-employer plans and other plans like that. But I think Virginia is moving this direction. We have the Republican treasurer in Pennsylvania, Stacey Garrity, that's actually trying to run the same program we have, using all my talking points. So this is something that shouldn't be partisan. This is about everybody. I don't care whether you're affiliated or not affiliated in a party. This is to lift everybody up. And so this is why you see kind of a bipartisan approach on this.
And it's important too, because most of the workforce, 20 to 30-year-olds, they don't even think about retirement. And all of a sudden they hit 40. They're like, oh, wait a minute.
Well, and starting early and saving regularly is the key. So the trouble is getting on the radar screen for people to know they have to do that. So again, it's the easy button. We want to make this easy. The opt-out, auto-enroll opt-out seems to be the easy button.
Awesome.
Well, we can think of a lot of people who that would make a huge difference for, and I'm excited to see this roll out.
Star Wars.
Sorry.
That is the first time that's happened in our
well, and I
year
should
and a half.
switch mine off. I just realized that. I did switch mine off.
So I'm a super nerd, and yes, all my ringtones are Star Wars. Forgot. Sorry. So
hey, over a year without that happening.
No, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I
just thought it was the hook. You were giving me the hook. All right, we're moving on.
The Oscar music, right?
Right. Yeah. To do that. Okay. So we talked about Clamor. We talked about this. There were two other things we want to talk about. This was an interesting thing, and then we're going to talk about find your money kind of thing, which is what everybody always wants to hear about from you at every single meeting. So we ask you about this every time we're with you, and we know you're sick of it, but that's okay. But before,
I'm not. I love it.
Oh, good. So before we get into that, now this was interesting. So we asked you kind of what was going on. And for those of you who listen to the show or they watch the show, I have a rant on YouTube, on our YouTube channel about energy and our concerns about the how, where, why, when, and who's actually going to be impacted by this. And so you were telling us earlier that you've actually, as the treasurer, that sort of unexpectedly, there's been some developments, of course, during an election here where everybody's a little bit weird.
A little bit.
Yeah, a lot of bit weird, including myself.
Well, that's why we're going to the legislative barbecue. That's where we get really weird.
Oh, yeah. So here in Colorado, it's a tradition. I don't know if you know how many years, and we're getting ready to go over to that later this afternoon or this evening. It's about 600 elected officials and politicos from all over the state in a tent sweating. This is what happens.
And everybody acts like they love each other. And
it's so
I cannot
great.
Escape the legislative barbecue. I think this is like 18 years going to it for me.
Right. So we're going to do that here in a little bit. If you could see, we're all wearing boots and, Okay, but this was really interesting, and I'm sorry I didn't track it more, but it was something about treasurers getting together to decide about investment in energy. Tell us a little bit about that, and tell us how treasurers would have an impact. This is interesting.
Well, it is interesting, and I think sometimes people don't understand exactly what we do in the Treasurer's office. But we actually, I between PARA and the money that comes through Department of Revenue into the Treasury, at any given time, I'm managing about $80 billion. That's a sizable amount of money, and a lot of that is invested. We keep money in the bank to cover obligations. Certainly you don't want to bounce checks, but any dollar that we can move into investments, we do so in order to get a better return. You would expect that we would do that. And PARA has a full-blown portfolio, about $60 billion, that they have equities and alternatives and fixed income and a whole variety, real estate, the whole 9 yards of investing. In the Treasury, we can only really invest in very conservative things. But we're interested in sustainability. And so when we invest, we're long-term investors. We're not day traders. We're trying to make sure that we have a portfolio that is sustainable for a long period of time. And particularly in PARA, we have generations of people that want to count on their benefits for retirement being there when they're ready to retire. So we can't, we have a strong fiduciary duty to make sure that we are looking at the long term when we invest. Interestingly, there was an article in the New York Times, which was reprinted just recently in the Denver Post. It was a front page article a couple of Saturdays ago that talked about the fact that Republican treasurers are banding together and are demanding that their money only be invested in companies that are supporting only fossil fuels. And, I invest for energy. And I think all the treasurers do that. No one believes we can live without energy. We have to have energy companies. But I think we're also realizing that there are practices that are having major impact on our state and our country and our world that we need to move away from. And so certainly we're not going to do away with fossil fuels in the near term. We need that transition. Everybody's still driving gas-powered cars, but some people are buying electric vehicles. We have electrical generation by alternative methods, wind and solar, but also natural gas. And so there's a movement that's happening. And as we see the problems we have with water, the problems we have with recreation, particularly the ski industry and climate change is really impacting our state, it's important that we look to the future and that we invest smartly in the long term. And so the announcement by the Republican state treasurers that they were going to move away from any company that wasn't fully supporting fossil fuels was troubling to me. And I think, as I think about my fiduciary duty, if I made statements like that, I think I would be violating my fiduciary duty. So it'll be interesting on the campaign trail to see how this plays out. But the treasurer in Wyoming and Utah and Arizona and Nebraska have all signed on to this. And so we'll see how it plays out in the campaign trail.
So this is so interesting on so many levels. I understand, but I understand what they're trying to do. I really, and we've been pushing for a while, like let the technology, let's get innovative, let's make things cleaner, let's invest in a way that's going to bless everybody, that's not going to cost a lot of jobs, that's not sidelining things that we can't do better on. But for investments to be politicized like that is
dangerous. It's dangerous.
Yeah.
And
frankly,
and you could take it on the other side. It could be only investing in companies that are 100% wind or 100% solar. It's just not. You're playing with people's money with this.
Well, you want to make smart decisions with that. So
and you want to make smart decisions, but when you're talking about something like para, and I'm assuming that that would include something like that if somebody was to do something like that. My husband's a teacher. We're going to be relying a lot on his retirement, but I think something in the Action 22 footprint, something like all of the income is around 45% of income in the Action 22 footprint comes from para. Because they're state employees. You have so many people that are teachers, or work, in roads or whatever. Mm-hmm. They work for the state in some way, and that ends up being terrifying.
Well, and there's been moves in the legislature. They haven't gone through to actually force para to divest from fossil fuels. Those have not gone through. And frankly, there may be energy companies that appear to be fossil fuel companies at this point that are under the radar screen, and because of disclosure, they're not, and competitiveness, they're not telling people what they're doing, but they may be retooling to become a company, an energy company of the future. And so you wouldn't want to sell that stock if they were actually technologically or innovation-wise onto something that would cause that stock, maybe undervalued at this point, to be worth a lot more. That would
because
be a
they're
real asset
investing in that sustainable
and it'd be
technology.
A real asset in our portfolio. We wouldn't want to dump that off. So I think that this is really an interesting moment in time. And again, you want to be extremely thoughtful, and you really want to adhere to your fiduciary duty when you make these investment decisions to make sure that the investments are sustainable over the long term. This
is just something to pay attention to, and we're going to talk about this. Brian has something else we're going to talk about in a few minutes that are totally unrelated. But one of the reasons that we do the show is because we always try to talk about things that maybe not other people are talking about, or it's not the political rhetoric, but we want you to be paying attention to, so that a light goes on when you hear this, so you can remember, oh wait, we heard something about this, we better be paying attention. This is one of those things you need to be paying attention to, a trend that you need to be paying attention to. Okay, let's end on really great stuff with you.
Sure.
Okay. So, what is it?
So everybody likes money.
Yes.
And you work with money every day.
I do.
So how can I get some money from you?
Well, the Great Colorado Payback, of course. So the Great Colorado Payback is unclaimed property. And I'm going to give that URL that's so long. It's colorado.findyourunclaimed.property.com is the URL. I have some numbers here. In Pueblo, there is $20 million in cash just for the city of Pueblo residents, and I think the county was even bigger than that. I can't read the small print here, but
you said $22.5 million for all of Pueblo County.
Exactly, and I'm not even talking about all the other counties that are part of the Action 22. Yeah. I mean, I'm just talking about one out of the 22, right? But there's in Pueblo County, there's over 200,000 claims that are out there. And overall, we're holding over $1 billion of unclaimed property in the Treasury. Most of it's cash. Mm-hmm. Some of it is safety deposit box contents. We don't have bicycles and cars and things like that. That's county level. But at the state level, we're anxious to reunite people with this unclaimed property. And so you can go to the URL, or if you can't remember that, you can just search the Great Colorado Payback, and you should get to a page that has a picture of me on there. You can put your name in, you can put the zip code in, you can search. There may be, if you have a common name, multiple claims, that some of which are yours, some of which aren't yours, and then you have to kind of look through to see which ones are yours. But, we've tried to streamline this. I think in years past, it was primarily paper-based, and it was very awkward. When I came into office, there were 13,000 claims in the backlog. And we've cleared all those out now and moved to a digital interface, and we're really trying to streamline the process. In fact, on some claims, if we search it out and we know you are actually the owner, the rightful owner, and we know the exact address you're at, we mail a letter saying, be on the lookout for a check, and we just send a check without actually having to file a claim. But, we take our job seriously. We want to be sure we're returning the property to the rightful owners. So be patient with us. Typically, the money or the safety deposit box contents have to be dormant for 5 years before the bank or whoever it is sends that money or property to us. And so we want to be sure we really do our work, and we may ask for additional information, including a Social Security number, to be absolutely certain, because nothing worse if we actually gave your money to the wrong person, right? Mm-hmm. Right? So we want to be sure we're giving it to the right person. So you have to be a little patient. But can I talk about the world?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So last year, I was the president of all unclaimed property programs around the world. And so we have 2 additional websites, unclaimed.org and missingmoney.com. And they have a map in each website, and you can actually click where you might have lived in another state or even another country. We have provinces in Canada. We have a program as far away as Kenya. And you can click around if you've lived in these other places and check to see if you left some property behind there as well. So all of these programs are very anxious to get money back to you, get property back to you. So go check it out. It's not just for individuals either. So businesses, faith-based organizations, the Humane Society of the Pikes Peak region actually found $89,000.
Wow.
In unclaimed property and retrieved that, and you'll see, sometime in maybe December or January, we have a little film that Rocky Mountain PBS is going to put out that actually digs deeply into this. So we have individuals that are claiming, and we have businesses and nonprofits that are claiming, and so. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your work colleagues, tell the organizations you're part of. Go check it out.
Yeah, and I've had some from a business, so I looked that up in October last year. Got that. It wasn't much; it was $200, but $200, that's a dinner.
It's your money.
That's a date, you know. But then I checked again last week, and I had like 2 more pop up on it that I didn't have before. So it changes. Right. So keep going through it.
Well, and you know, it's not that people aren't paying attention to their money. Often you're not even aware.
Yeah.
That it's there. Can I give a personal story on this?
Yeah, absolutely.
So my grandmother took out 3 life insurance policies, and she never told my mother or anyone else in the family that she'd done that. And this was in the early 60s when we first moved to Colorado Springs. And then, you know, we moved from that house to another house in the meantime. 15 years later, she passed away. And so, you know, any forwarding information was long gone. And as a matter of fact, the city of Colorado Springs went up the street that we used to live on and renumbered the houses. So even if there had been forwarding, there wasn't any street number there for that house anymore. But we weren't even looking for it because we didn't know that these life insurance policies existed. So when she passed away, the insurance company tried to send the checks, and they bounced back to them. So eventually they ended up in the Treasury, and I think in the early 90s, they used to print these in the paper. I was looking through thousands and thousands of names, and I saw my mom's name in there 3 times. And I called them up, and they said, you've got to submit some paperwork. I had to submit my grandmother's death certificate, my mother's birth certificate to establish the connection. They wanted my grandmother's birth certificate, which was going to be a little hard because she was born at home in Wales. In the 1800s, so that wasn't available. But we worked with the Unclaimed Property Division, and eventually, the checks arrived. So, it's not laziness or forgetfulness or anything like that. It's just things that happen in life that often you're not aware of, and this money's sitting out there, and you're not even aware of it.
So let me ask this, and then we'll get out of here, but. Money aside, what's one of the most unusual things you've seen that's been in there? Like, a bar of gold from 1870 or something.
We have
a
lot of interesting things in there. So we have amazing jewelry and jewelry collections. We have loose stones. We have, things that you would find in a safety deposit box. We have coin collections, lots of gold coins, silver coins. We have silver bars. Don't have any gold bars that I'm aware of, but maybe we do, and I'm just not aware of it. We have one of the world's smallest guns.
Oh, wow.
We thought it was a charm bracelet for a charm. Yeah. It was a charm on a charm bracelet until we saw a YouTube video of somebody actually firing a similar gun, and we went, oh.
That's a gun.
That's actually a gun. And but the most unusual thing that we have, Brian, we have a box of dirt.
That's what I was going for, a box of dirt.
And I don't know why somebody would store it. It's not ashes. We'd be very careful about that. I'm not sure if there's some value to this dirt. We haven't assayed it, but, I'm not sure why somebody would put a box of dirt in a safety
Somebody bought
deposit.
A lordship in Ireland or something, and that's their box. That's their land.
Right.
They titled themselves Lord whatever.
But the thing you should know is that this is a trust fund. So we hold this material. Some of the things that are not really, don't look like they're sentimental and have a lot of value, we might auction. But if we auction it, we hold the money forever. And of course, any cash we hold forever. So it's not going to disappear.
Yeah.
And so I do encourage people to go look for it.
So again,
everybody go and look for this.
Go
Absolutely.
Look. $22.5 million just in Pueblo County.
And it's not just you. It's, your mother, your parents, your grandparents that may have passed away. Just like you said, with the life insurance, there's so many of those out there that the family didn't even realize they have. So
one of the biggest, we call them holders, the companies that have this or entities that have this. One of the bigger ones right now that I'm working with at the federal level is the U.S. Treasury. Mm-hmm. They have $29 billion of unredeemed savings bonds.
Wow.
And we think it's about $500 million here right in Colorado. And we're trying to get these back to Colorado so we can get them back to people.
Wow.
Love it. Love it.
Disclaimer?
We can do disclaimer. Do you want to talk about the other issue?
What's the other issue?
The veterans. You're going to talk about that later? Okay.
We'll talk about that later.
We'll talk about that
we
later.
want to end this on a positive note.
Okay, we want to leave this on
that'll
a positive
be the next
note.
show.
Okay,
so,
go ahead.
During an election season, Action 22 neither supports nor endorses candidates, but what we do is offer a platform for any Action 22 member running for office to come on our show, talk about their campaign, the issues, and what they're about. So with that, if you're running for office and you're a member of Action 22, email us at show@action22.org. If you're not a member of Action 22 and running for office, join and then come on our show. Election season, our election day is coming up soon, and we want to get as many people that are running for office on here to tell you what they're about. If you go on our website now, there is a page that all of our candidate interviews will have the videos up, so you can go and watch those from, county commissioner all the way up to U.S. Congress. So please check that out. That's at action22.org. And if you're not a member of Action 22 and not a candidate, but you want to learn more, email me again, show@action22.org, or go to our website.
All right. I just wanted to
go
ahead.
One more thing in.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
When you said veterans, it reminded me one thing. These Tabor refunds that are going out, the checks that are going out, I know have been controversial. But one of the things that I've been telling people, and I happened to run across the home veterans when I was at the parade in Monte Vista. And, often seniors don't have any reason to file their taxes. So, why file if you have no reason to do that? But this year you do. Mm-hmm. So if you are a senior that didn't file, if you file by October 17th, even though you weren't anticipating a refund for these Tabor refunds, you will get a check. It probably will come in December or January. Yeah. But that's $750.
Yeah.
So for a senior,
that's not a small amount of money.
For a senior on fixed income. And, I think there was some confusion, who should file, who shouldn't. But I'm really for sure emphasizing seniors should go ahead and file. If you need help filing, reach out. But we want to make sure that people, because, a senior is a contributor. They were paying taxes a full lifetime, right? So, they really ought to be able to file and get this refund.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Good point.
So thank you, Dave. We don't always know what the impact of the show is, but I found out that we've had a very big impact today, and I want to share that all with you. Chad Forthman, I know that you're listening. It was so good to see all of your face today. There was no mustache. It was just smooth like a baby's bottom.
Wait,
it
are you
was
telling
fantastic. Well, we'll have to show you. Chad Forthman decided to grow a mustache. It wasn't what we wanted. But anyways, I know you're listening, Chad Forthman, and we appreciate you returning to us in your full face and form. So thanks. We will see you guys next week.
Thank you.